I want to identify myself. I'm Ray Bradbury, but you're very curious, aren't you, to find out how I fell in love with books. Now, remember this, love is at the center of your life. The things that you do should be things that you love, and things that you love should be things that you do. So that's what you learn from books. I learned to read when I was 3 years old. I loved comic strips. I loved the cartoons on Sunday, and I got a book of fairy tales when I was 5 years old, and I fell in love with reading all these wonderful stories like Beauty and the Beast and Jack and the Beanstalk. So I began with fantasy, and by the time I was 3 years old, I saw my first movie, and I fell in love with the motion pictures. I saw The Hunchback of Notre Dame, and I hoped to grow up to be a hunchback. And then when I was 5, I saw The Phantom of the Opera with Lon Chaney. I became infatuated with Lon Chaney. And when I was 6, I saw a film on dinosaurs, and dinosaurs filled my life. And by the age of 6, I began to read about dinosaurs, and they affected my whole life and wound up with me getting the work on Moby Dick when I was 33 years old, because I fell in love with dinosaurs when I was 6. So you see how these things work out. A thing that begins when you're 3 and 6 and 10 and 12 wind up in your fictions when you're in your 30s. The things that you do should be things that you love, and things that you love should be things that you do. I got a job selling newspapers on a street corner. I made $10 a week. And every morning I got up and I wrote stories, and in the evening I went to the library and I expressed myself when I was 19 about my loves of life, and I put it into my books, and that's the secret of my life. Thank God I went my way and not the way other people told me to go. A carnival man came along at a carnival down by the lakefront, and he sat in an electric chair. He had a sword full of fire. He saw me in the audience. He pointed his sword at me and touched me on the end of my nose and said, "Live forever, live forever." Why he said that, I don't know. But I went down for a meeting with him the next day because I wanted to say, how can I live forever? And he took me in a tent to show me all the freaks. And I met inside the tent the Illustrated Man. Isn't that wonderful? I met the Illustrated Man when I was 12. And I realized he'd given me a gift of some sort. I knew that my life had changed, and I went home, and when I got there, they gave me a toy typewriter. I wrote my first story. I became a writer because that period of a few days, I discovered I was alive. I discovered maybe I could live forever if I became a writer. So I've written every day since that day I arrived in Tucson, Arizona. In the last 75 years, I've never stopped writing. Well, if you know how to read, you have a complete education about life, then you know how to vote within a democracy. But if you don't know how to read, you don't know how to decide. That's the great thing about our country, is we are a democracy of readers, and we should keep it that way. I published the first version of Fahrenheit, the Fireman, in a science fiction magazine, Galaxy, in February 1951, and Ballantine came along, and they read that short novel of 25,000 words and said, "Can you extend the novel? Can you write another 25,000 words? And we'll publish a full novel, and you've got to find a title for it, though. The Fireman is not it." I got curious, at what temperature does book paper catch fire and burn? So I called the chemistry department at UCLA. They didn't know. I called SC, and they didn't know. I said, "Dummy, call the fire department." So I called the fire chief at the fire department in downtown LA. I said, "Mr. Chief, could you tell me at what temperature book paper catches fire and burns?" He says, "Wait, I'll be right back." He came back and he said, "Book paper catches fire and burns at 451 degrees Fahrenheit." I said, that's good. So I'll reverse it. It's got to be Fahrenheit 451. So that's how I found out what the temperature was. When I moved into LA with my family, I had 2 daughters. I needed an office because my daughters were very loud and wonderful and lovely, but I had no money for an office. I was wandering around up at UCLA, and I heard typing in a room down in the basement. And I went down to the basement, and I found a room had 12 typewriters in it. I could rent a typewriter for 10 cents a half hour. So I said, my God, this is my office. Doesn't matter, I was surrounded by students. I got a bag of dimes. I moved into the typing room in the basement of the library, and I spent $9 and $9.80, and I wrote Fahrenheit 451. So you see, what a place for Fahrenheit 451 to be written in the library of all places where it wasn't being burned. I found my love in a bookstore, not in the library, but a bookstore is a library, and I met a pretty girl there who waited on me, and I took her to coffee, and I took her to dinner, and I fell in love with her and the books surrounding her, and she took a vow of poverty a year later and married me because my income was nothing, and she was a rich girl, and she gave up all of her money to become poor like me and live in Venice without a telephone, without a car. But we lived on love and books and my writing. So that's the answer to life. If you can find a person to love who loves life as much as you do and loves books as much as you do, grab her or him and get married. That's pretty good, isn't it? Life is wonderful. That's a wonderful thing. Love what you do and do what you love. Don't listen to anyone else who tells you not to do it. You do what you want, what you love. But imagination should be the center of your life. Here lies Ray Bradbury, who loved life completely.